Joshua with Think Liberty, and today we are joined by Will Coley. Will is the co-founder and national director of Muslims for Liberty, whose message has circumvented the globe, planting seeds which have established libertarian parties in Pakistan and Turkey, an altcoin currency movement that thrives in Malaysia, and an underground network in many places where speaking for freedom is risking your life. Will is also a prior libertarian candidate for vice president in the 2016 primary and continues his brand of outreach and activism daily. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's a nice Saturday here in Washington.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Hey, not a problem. We're glad you're here. So let's start off with a little bit about your journey to the Liberty Movement and how you got to where you are today.
Oddly enough, I say over and over again that I am a product of dumb luck, or what people in the faith world would call lots of blessings. Everything basically is just kind of fallen into my lap, to be honest about it. I was lecturing at the University of Central Florida, and some students came to me and complained that qualified big-name scholars weren't given the opportunity to come to UCF to speak, but they would allow anti-Muslim speakers to come on the university's dime. And so I had this idea that we would take the free speech areas and use them, like take advantage of these extra rules that the government had put in that the schools in the state had put in place, and use it against them. And we would invite these speakers ourselves, and we'd set up a little stage with a set of tents and all this stuff, and we would just host these speakers ourselves. And the first time that we put it all together, our speaker got sick. So I'm calling and nobody's there, and I'm like, hey, where are you? And his wife is like, he's very ill, he's not going to make it today. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, somebody's got to get up there, like we've got this whole thing set up. So I just kind of did it, and that's really where it started. A few weeks later, a guy was given an anti-racism, an award for standing up against racism, who himself was so racist that he was on the Daily Show for an anti-Arab campaign video that he had put out. So I went to protest against him getting this award. And while I was there, I met Phil Russo, who happened to be the host of Tea Party Patriots Live on 660 WORL in Orlando. And he invited me on his show because he liked the fact that I was there and I was ballsy. And he wanted to talk about Islam. So I came on the show. One of his co-hosts quit in protest. So they hired me. He offered me, basically he needed his electric bill paid and he couldn't pawn his laptop and was freaking out. And I was like, look, man, I will loan you the $160, but I have to know. Like, he's like, no, dude, like the check will be here in 2 days. I just don't have it and I'll cut the lights off tomorrow. And I was like, all right, man, here's the $160, but I have to have it back in 2 days. And when he brought me the money back, he asked me if I could give him a ride to the radio station, and then he asked me if I could come in. And then while we were on the air, he was like, so I think you should just take Jason's old spot. And that was literally like how I became an activist in the liberty community. Wow. Was it just kind of fell in my lap. And that's how I met Alexander Snitker with the Florida Libertarian Party, who got me into the libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party. And then I called him whining and complaining about the fact that the big name Muslim organizations were ignoring the work that I was doing and other people like me were doing in the Muslim community. And he told me to shut up and quit whining or take the responsibility and set up a way to give other Muslims like myself a platform. So we created Muslims for Liberty, and then I met Davi, and then Davi and I set up like a Facebook page and started doing media events and interviews like the one I'm doing now. Right. And then I get an email from these two brothers one in Virginia, one in New York, that have built a website with the same name. And they're like, we're not trying to hijack you or anything. We just, we were Googling the new website and we found your Facebook page and we really, really respect your work. So we decided to put our efforts together, and I mean, it's literally just, and it's been one thing after another like that, where it's just kind of, like the move to New Hampshire that we're doing right now. We've been going to New Hampshire for the Pork Fest every year for 5 years. And 4 of those years we've gone and we've fed free food to celebrate Ramadan to the libertarians that are there. And this past year, one of the guys there came up to me and said, hey, look, I got this piece of property, and do you think if there's a mosque in Keene, more Muslims will move to New Hampshire? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be something that would influence their decision on where to move. And he was like, okay, well, if I gave you a piece of property to open a mosque, would you come to New Hampshire and open a mosque? And I was like, define gave.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we'll sell it to you for an ounce of silver. You give me an ounce of silver, I sell you the property. When you and your community finally hit a point 2 years, 10 years from now, where you've outgrown the building, you sell it back to me for an ounce of silver, and you move out to your bigger property.
Wow.
And I was like, and we don't have to pay you like a mortgage or rent or anything. And they were like, pay the tax bill until you get the tax exempt status on the property, and then you don't have to pay anything.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And it's just, again, it was another one of those things where I was out trying to do something that I thought was the right thing. And through doing that, I just happened to like come into contact with these people who are like, hey, what can I do for you?
Right.
So, and that's been my life in the liberty community. It's been a few setbacks and sad times. But overall, it's been kind of stumbling from one good fortune to the next.
It's pretty wild how that season just kind of fall in your lap like that.
Yeah.
It's like you were meant for it or something.
Yeah. And what's funny is how horribly my life went before making the decisions that that have influenced my life today. And how things work now, like it used to be. Like there was a joke that if Will wasn't homeless in October, then the world must have ended, because it didn't matter. Like if I was making $300 a day in October, I'm going to be homeless. It's just going to happen. Like I don't know how or why, for like 5 years in a row. And now I've been married for 8 years. I got 5 kids. I have a lucrative t-shirt business that we have. I have a lucrative activist life, that I also am working on. Now I'm going to be running my own mosque. Like it's kind of a complete opposite of what it was before.
Full overhaul, definitely.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the things you've done through activism, and how do you work with the Libertarian Party?
Well, truthfully, most of the work that I've done up to now hasn't had a lot to do with the party. My quote-unquote claim to fame has been mostly working in the international activist community and in empowering, there are a lot of Muslim libertarians. When I first started doing this work, I thought my wife and I were the only ones. And then I met Davi, and I was like, okay, well, this is our little clique. And then I met Rami and Hisham, and I was like, okay, well, now this is our little clique. And then within 2 years, we had over 2,000 followers, the biggest portion of them in Pakistan, which was the first of the countries that we have major followings in to set up a libertarian think tank of its own, public libertarian think tank of its own. PRIME, the Pakistani Research Institute for Market Economics, which is run by a couple of brothers that live there. And, we try to empower Muslim libertarians all over the world to do these kind of things in their own communities. Right now, currently, I'm working with Ibrahim Anoba and a couple brothers in Nigeria to set up Nigeria's first libertarian think tank in Lagos.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we, and we try to bring, when we find those brothers, people like Ibrahim, we try to bring them in and introduce them to as many people in the liberty community in the States as we can. Again, because to me, having that kind of a Rolodex, where I've spent almost 10 years of my life working in the libertarian activist community, and like I have this young, motivated, budding young, like activist. He's like 20, and he thinks he can change the world tomorrow. Okay, when he comes to me, he may in 5 years outshine me like a supernova versus the sun.
Right.
But that's cool, bro, because it's not about who's the shiniest star. It's about kicking ass and taking names, and are we going to win this fight or not? So when they come to me and they're like, oh, brother, blah, I want to do and this, and I'm like, all right, man, let me introduce you to this guy here. And you know what? This cat over here, he's on a bunch of radio stations and he can get you on the air. So let me get you in touch with him. And, and here's this brother in Pakistan, or this other brother in Qatar, or this brother in Iran, depending on their situation and whether they're trying to live, or whether they live in the country where they're trying to set this up and it's something that they can be like out and in your face about, to a degree, or is it a country where like y'all got to be on the down low,
right?
Like shh, nobody can know. So, and I'm going to set you up with activists that I've worked with over the last 7-8 years, that are going to tell you how to do it, because they're the ones that were doing it in their own countries. Like I got brothers that used to work with me in Iran. They live in America now. Before Donald Trump got elected, they was like, things just ain't all that good over here. And I'm just not that, I don't believe that we're going to be able to win this fight in 8. I don't want to be stuck here for 8 years. Right. So I'm going to roll out. Trump might bomb it here. And I'm just going to go, I'm going to go over there because Trump won't bomb Detroit.
Right.
We hope.
Right. Yeah, we hope.
And so like I've got some activists that like in Iran that live here in the States now, and I hook these cats up with each other so that they know what to expect, how to deal with internet, how to deal with ghosting, so that they can post and it looks like they're in Alabama, and how to set those kind of things up so that they can do their own activism in their own countries and try to spread these ideas in there. Because I can't go there. I'm an American, man. I can't go to Saudi Arabia and spread liberty because I'm not Saudi, man. I don't understand their culture. I don't understand the language. Well, not really well. The language so well. There's just so many things that are foreign to me that a brother that's from there needs to be doing that work. Right. So instead of me going there and setting these think tanks up myself, I'm going to find young brothers and sisters on the ground that are working there, and I'm going to show them how they can do it for themselves. Right. That's what I do. Nice. That's what brought me into the libertarian movement, because Daryl Perry wanted me as his running mate. He wanted a qualified and strong foreign policy voice, because the race was lacking one, both on the presidential and the vice presidential side. And, I work closely with people in a lot of these countries that are on the news every day. Right. And, I know young men and women on the ground that are trying to make changes and make a difference in the ways that they're able to change the paradigm in the countries that they're in. Yeah, and they all agree that us bombing the piss out of them is not a solution that's going to actually work.
And I agree with that. I don't think it's a good solution for anything. And being a libertarian, I mean, at this point, if you're not against foreign interventionism, it's hard to call yourself a libertarian. So Obviously, while working with Muslims for Liberty, you do a lot of outreach to those who follow the teachings of Islam and bring them to the liberty movement. Have you found any barriers or challenges to bringing traditional Muslims towards liberty?
No, not really. A lot of it comes from. All right, so you've had this particularly authoritarian strain of Islam that's been in ascendancy since the turn of the 20th century. Mostly empowered. If the American government isn't empowering it like it has for the last 50 years, the British government was for the 50 years previously. So you have this authoritarian strain of Islam that our governments find useful, so to speak, and so they empower it, they fund it, they arm it, and now those powers have the ability to, in the midst of economic crises that have happened across the Muslim world for the last 50 years, each country having at least one, they go in with all their money and they subsidize the printing presses, they subsidize the schools, they subsidize the universities. But as we always know, money from the government always comes at a price. So these institutions can't pay their own bills. They have to, in Saudi Arabia comes in with their money, and now Saudi wants to control translations. Saudi wants to control what books are being printed. Saudi wants to control the books themselves. They want to be able to go in and add context that doesn't appear in original texts. I mean, to the point, like, it's so bad PBS did a documentary about it,
right,
called Inside the Quran, where they spelled Quran with a K. And they showed, like, all right, here's what the original text says. All right, now here's what the Saudi translation says. All right, now here's what the original text would say if the Saudi translation was right. And you see that, like, particularly anti-Christian, anti-Jew, pro-sectarian context being added to translations that are sent to Pakistan, that are translated into Urdu, or that are sent to America, that are translated into English. Right. And so you have that influence. Again, though, not happening in a vacuum. The people who are have all this wealth to influence the conversation 100 years ago were itinerant farmers herding goats in the desert with bare feet. You know what I mean? Right. Like they were the white. And this is going to sound horrible, but when you talk to the scholars, this is their opinion as well. They were the white trash of the desert.
Right.
They were they are the Beverly Hillbillies of the Muslim world.
It makes sense.
And somehow they ended up with all that. Yeah, they are the Beverly Hillbillies. They got the oil because they were willing to do what Britain wanted, and now what America wants. And now they get to act like they are the representative for the Muslim religion across the globe. Because if Saudi does it, or if it happens in Saudi, it must be orthodox. When anybody that has just a rudimentary understanding of Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic law knows that 80% of what you see on TV from Saudi Arabia is in conflict with Sharia itself. From the fact that they have a monarchy, to the fact that they have paper money, to their trading with the Americans, to their bombing Yemen, to their alliance and treaty with Israel. There's so much stuff that they've got, and it's like blatant.
Right.
But, people don't really talk about that. They just allow that misrepresentation to stand. Right. Almost like a caricature, in my opinion. Like, they have become like a caricature of what every white Midwestern, 2.5 kids is afraid of or thinks almost that stereotype. They've become a caricature for those stereotypes.
Right, which kind of leads me into my next point. There are many around the movement who have been very vocal about the religion you found yourself in, that think maybe it isn't conducive with liberty. How would you explain to those people that the teachings can, in fact, work with the liberty movement, and what are the parallels you speak of with Muslims for Liberty?
Well, one of the first things that when I started learning about voluntarism was the similarity between what voluntarists advocate for and the Median, what would be called the Median state, which was after Muhammad was many of his followers were tortured and murdered. They left a Jewish and Christian community in Medina. There were some conflicts in that community, and they wanted Muhammad to come and act as an arbitrator. And in return, his community could live there and they could be safe. And when he got there, he set up what I call a voluntarist state. You had Christian leaders and Christian markets and Christian laws and Christian courts for Christians. And you had the same thing for Jews. And the Prophet ﷺ was the leader, and he filled that role among the Muslims. If a Christian and a Jew got in a fight, then a Muslim would arbitrate between them. If a Muslim and a Jew got in a fight, then a Christian would arbitrate between them. And they set up a society that was built on contracts of non-aggression and mutual defense. I won't punch you. None of your people will punch my people, and we won't punch you. But if somebody outside the wall punches either of us, we will defend each other. And their economic systems, legal systems, political systems, they didn't exist separately. They existed on top of one another. And that's voluntarism. These are communities where people say, all right, I'm Christian. I want to live in the Christian community. I don't have to listen to what the Muslims want. I want to listen to what the Christians have to say. It was totally legit. And one of the arguments that not only myself, other libertarian theorists like David Friedman have made is that Sharia is a good example for study if you want to understand a legal system that is built to be able to function without a state, because Sharia is meant to function without the necessity of a centralized overseeing state. It's independent. It's the easiest way to explain it is where the American system has a separation of religion and government, separation of church and state. Islam has a separation of law and government. So government doesn't write law. Government doesn't create law. Government doesn't enforce law. The only place government takes is once all of these things that are independent of the state are done. If there is a capital punishment, then the state, that's their job. But outside of that, the state has no place in the creation, formulation, or carrying out of law. That's one of the problems with the creation of the modern nation state, is you took a Western nation state model and forced it to meld with a model that's meant to function.
Right.
So now you took law that's meant to be enforced via precedent and like here, judges don't really use their own discretion a lot of the time. Like the law is the law. Like the police say, like I don't write the laws. I just arrest you for them, right? Well, Sharia, it's meant for you to look at the case specifically, individually, and try to find a reason why you shouldn't have to use a criminal punishment in this case. Like, you're supposed to
Right.
try to find a reason. And if you can't find a reason, then as a judge, you should go look up cases before this that are similar and see if another judge found a reason. You know, like, it's your job. Your job as the judge is the due diligence to look for doubt and try to find a reason to dismiss. Because mercy is supposed to be the overbearing quality within the legal system. Okay, well, you take that now and you meld it with a system of empirical law, like what we have here, where it doesn't matter what the situation is so much as the law says this, you've broke the law, therefore you go to prison 10 years, therefore you die, therefore this. And you can't, they don't work well together. I mean, look at every Muslim country that's tried that tries to claim that they somehow enact Sharia. All you get is the hudud, and they throw every bit of the rest of the legal system out and only do the parts that that you hear about on TV. Anyway, another issue that I bring up quite often on my own radio show with basically every scholar that I bring on is that the Islamic tradition views the income tax as a form of oppression, as theft, and that it's not to be collected. It's something that's viewed as a form of oppression, and that the quote-unquote tax that is levied in the Islamic tradition, the one on non-Muslims, according to Omar, who was the second person to succeed Muhammad after his death, you can't coerce or harass, intimidate, or refuse protection to a non-Muslim who doesn't pay. And as far as the zakat is concerned, it's a 2.5% tax on your accrued wealth. And the easiest way for modern understanding, if you have had an excess of $4,000 in the bank that stayed in your bank all year long, like the whole year long, you had $4,000 and didn't spend any of it. 2.5% of that you need to either give to the mosque, to give to the poor, or even better yet, you need to go out in your neighborhood and you find a poor person yourself and you give that money directly to that poor person. That's how the zakat works. There's not supposed to be like a centralized collection of the zakat. One of the things that was popular back in the day was wealthy people would go to the grocery store and ask to see the bill of the customers that had like had an outstanding bill, that had a tab, and they would pay the grocery tabs of the poor people in the community during Ramadan, because Ramadan's when you pay your zakat. So the state wouldn't come to your house and be like, okay, we've audited your bank account and we looked in your mattress and we see that you had $12,000 that you just had sitting for a whole year, and you owe X amount on that $12,000. You need to pay us, because the zakat doesn't work that way. You yourself, what is better is you can give that money to the mosque, and they will give it to that need it. But what's better is for you yourself to go out and find that person, build the relationship with that person. Hey, it could be the guy that lives next door to you. Maybe you should have a good enough relationship with him that you know if he just lost his job, or if his kids his wife or one of his kids just got really sick, and that's what that money is for. You need to go out, you need to give that money yourself, to take care of your community. And the government has no oversee over that. And the Prophet talks about that tax on a few different instances. And every time that he talks about there being any kind of a restitution for not paying your fair share of taxes. It's always God. It's never ever you'll be thrown in jail for this amount of time, or you'll be fined, or there's never a point where he says the state has a right to decide how much money you're giving or you're not giving. It's you and God that know. And if God knows you cheated, you know you cheated, then you'll take it up with him later. And again, that comes back to that whole idea of of libertarian, some people call it an oxymoron, libertarian socialism, where you are going out and you are doing this, but there's no threat of violence from the state against you if you don't. You'll answer to God for it later, whatever that may be. But the government doesn't have a right to come and audit you, find out how much money you have. It's none of their damn business.
It's not. It's really not. So you've been very vocal about the extreme right that claim to work with the LP. Some may call them nationalists or even white nationalists. What problems do you see between liberty and nationalism?
Actually, nationalism was one of those subjects that I kind of accidentally stumbled again into studying. I'm a huge nerd. I really just can't help it. If I'm watching, if my television's on, I'm either watching cartoons with my kids, or I literally live on documentaries, particularly history documentaries. And I started studying the work of Albert Kahn, because I thought it was really fascinating that there were all these color pictures and videos from the turn of the 20th century, when I was like, I didn't even realize color photography and video existed. And there was this really insane process that you had to go through. But Albert Kahn was a French philanthropist. He was a bank guy and invested in one of the first South African diamond mines. And so he had money out the wazoo, and he died pretty much broke, because he made it his life's mission to take color photographs of the cultures that were being destroyed all across Europe by the march of militant nationalism in the build-up to World War I. And how if you were in France, in the span of 40 kilometers, you could come into contact with as many as 2 or 3 different types of dress, different types of religion, different languages in France. And this is in, the late early 1900s. And that because of the militancy and the nationalism of Germany and Prussia, the French basically became this staunchly nationalist state, because they wanted to be sure that if there was an invasion, a Breton would be as happy to throw himself in front of a volley of gunfire as a Parisian or someone from Provence. And that all of these cultures and languages, and he did it just in more than just France. He did it all across Europe and parts of Western Asia. But he showed how nationalism came into a beautifully rich, diverse, free market ideals. Ideas. It was just this beautiful patchwork of all of these different groups and cultures, and they were existing and living on top of each other and amongst each other. And nationalism said, no, everybody needs to be the same. And so they got rid of these different local identities, the Parisian identity, the Breton identity, the languages, and they nationalized it. And instead of being a Breton, now you were French. Instead of being a part of these smaller, less centralized groups, they wanted you to identify with this bigger, more centralized, more powerful, far more militant And that became the precursor to socialism all across Europe. Because first it was the idea that we are all blood, we are all brothers. And then it became, well, since we're all blood and we're all brothers, the government should take your money and give it to your brother because, well, he's your brother.
Right.
You know, and so, no, I'm sorry, nationalism is not compatible with liberty. If you're a person who wants less government, less centralization, less power, less control, then no, nationalism is not the way to go, because nationalism is about central is central to the philosophy. I mean, it's the belief that somehow you are superior to your fellow human being by nature of what side of an invisible line you were shot out on.
Right. One of
I can
those.
say it like
sorry.
British, right?
What's that? Yeah, absolutely. So one of those people is obviously Augustus Invictus, who you've talked about debating several different times. Obviously, he's moved on over to the GOP now. He's no longer the LP's ally. But can you tell us what happened there and why it never happened? What was that?
Problem? He's no longer the LP's problem. So I was the first headliner to be invited to speak at the Mid-Atlantic Liberty Festival. I was invited way, way back in like August of last year. And then about 2 weeks before the event, Augustus announced that he had been given a platform at the event as well. And there were other speakers that said they were going to boycott. And I didn't want to do that because I understand the playbook. You know, the Augustus, Milo, Richard Spencer, Brigitte Gabriel, Pam Geller, like they all use the same playbook. You know, the martyrdom, you know, cast yourself as a martyr, and what you say or do doesn't really matter if you can convince at least enough of the populace to believe you're a martyr. And that's what they do. They cast themselves as these martyrs for free speech and for freedom when the opposite is true. And I didn't want to give him the opportunity to die on that mountain. You know what I mean? So what I did was I went to the event organizers and I was like, look, man, I love you guys. We're really good friends. I don't want to boycott your event. I make money at these events too. You know, so I want this to still be able to be good for both of us. But I don't want to share a venue with this guy. And, you know, if I'm there, I'm going to confront him. And they were like, well, why not just do a debate? And I was like, well, you know what? Just do that then. Let's do that. Because I don't, if I have to share a venue with him, I want it to be made clear that he shouldn't be there. That he doesn't belong.
Right.
You know, you're more than welcome to be in the building, and you're more than welcome to your freedom of speech, but you don't belong here. Your philosophy and ours are not compatible. And then that just it didn't happen because the event got canceled. And then it became this thing of, I didn't want to debate Augustus to start with. You know, I had no desire to share a venue with him in any way, shape, or form. He was invited to an event I was already on the playbill for. So I took the debate rather than dropping out of the event because I didn't want to leave my friends who organized the event without a headliner.
Right.
You know, 2 weeks before the event, I didn't want to be that guy. You know, I want there to be more Liberty events. I want Liberty events to be successful. So I went out of my way to try to make sure that one was. Yeah, I didn't want to share a venue with him, but I still wanted this event to be successful. So I decided to do the debate. Now, since then, people are like, well, I want you to debate him. It's like, well, the debate was one of those things that, like, look, I'll do this because I'm given no other choice other than doing something else I don't want to do. A debate with Augustus is, here's something that I don't want to share a venue with him. I don't want him to be able to tie his name to mine. I said that one time, and somebody said, they're like, well, I know who he is, but I don't know who you are. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'd rather not be famous than be infamous. And that's why you know who Augustus is. You don't know who he is because of anything good. And I would rather not be known than be known and it be because, oh, well, you gave a voice to this idiot over here. And that's, there's this obsession for some reason among the alt-right with about 4 members of the liberty community. Myself, Jeffrey Tucker, Ovens O'Brien, and there's another one, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. There's like this headhunter mentality, like they want to be the one that's like, I took down Jeffrey Tucker.
Good luck.
And I'm just like, man, I see what you guys are doing, and for me, it's like I don't have time for you. You don't realize like I'm so busy. I don't have time for you. I just really don't. Like I've got so many. Like I used to spend my time engaging with all these idiots. Like when I first got started, but that was because I was just getting started, and I had the time to engage in idiocy with idiots. And now I'm on the road every weekend. I'm trying to work a job, get ready to move, take care of 5 kids, host a national radio show, write on occasion, work on campaigns for candidates in 6 different states. Like, bro, I don't have time for you and your nonsense. I'm sorry. Like, you got all the time in the world to go out there and like stir up this drama. And I'm good. I'm glad you got time for all that. I got things that I got to get done. I don't have time for it. And right. I don't have time for Augustus.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense. I'm starting to get more involved daily, and it's getting a lot harder to. I used to be really into debating, especially with anarcho-communists and stuff online, and it's just I don't even have time for it. I don't even have time for it anymore.
Nick Sarwark said something to me, and I think they're gonna love that I'm quoting Nick. Nick Sarwark said something to me one time. He was like, "No oxygen for idiots."
That sounds like a Nick Sarwark quote. I love it.
I was like, you know what, bro, you're right.
It does. It makes sense. So with all that talk and what's going on today, what are your thoughts on the current happenings in Charlottesville, Virginia? Since that just happened today, I mean, it's fresh for everybody. So
you got two groups of authoritarians that are facing off with each other. On one side, you have a group who live in a delusional fantasy where they're constantly under threat, and they want the big boot of government to socially engineer their utopia. And on the other side, you have a group of people who are completely delusional. You literally have the same thing on both sides. One wants to create like a state where minorities oppress white people, and particularly male white people. And on the other side, you have male white people who want to oppress everybody. And it's like, of course you folks don't get along.
Right. How could
You're
you?
You're opposite of each other.
Except for the authoritarian part.
Well, no, they're both authoritarians.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're completely opposite except for the authoritarian part.
Situational. William Grigg actually coined the term, situational Leninism, and they are that ideal on display in almost in like a caricature like form. Yeah, they are that whole idea of like it's only wrong when the other side does it. On display for everybody to see. When Antifa is busting out car windows and busting up Starbucks, these alt-right fools are like, but when these alt-right fools get together, they're literally hurling missiles filled with flammable fluid at people with these tiki. I mean, that's literally what. I watched the video and I saw some of these guys go like this, you see the can come loose, and it's like a lacrosse stick, slinging it.
Right.
And at that point, that becomes a deadly missile. At that point, that becomes assault with a deadly weapon. That's not something that you can sit back and be like, oh, well, it's cool.
Right.
So no, I'm sorry, man. That wasn't cool. You guys have finally shown that you have the capacity for the same thing you condemn the other side. And neither one of you guys has the ability to rise above.
Right.
And perfect example. Here a few months ago, I'm sure you saw this. There was the guy who he had a heart attack at an anti-Muslim protest, and we decided to be the example and to raise money for his medical bills and try to be like, look, rise above.
Right.
You got to rise above these things and tempt out the better nature in your neighbor and your fellow man, because right now, no one is appealing to those things in each other. All we're appealing to in each other and in ourselves is those demons within ourselves that we all have, regardless of faith or color, or ethnic, where you're from. None of that matters. We all have our own demons that, and most of us have the same demons.
Right.
Just different. Just the only difference is which we have. Some of us have more of some than we have of others. And we need to find a way as a society to tip that better nature out. And our community, the liberty community, libertarians, we are the ones that have the ability to do that, because we are the only people in the conversation. The only people in the conversation. Let me repeat that. Even if there are 50 parties, we're the only people in the conversation that are saying it's not the government's job to solve these problems. We should be solving them with our neighbors. We should be solving them with the guy down the street. We should be doing this among ourselves in our own communities. We should be creating solutions within our communities that work for our communities, because the solution in Maryville is not the solution in Keene, and the solution in Keene is not the solution in BFE, Missouri, or wherever it is that you or whoever happens to live. Every solution, every community is going to have to create their own solutions to these problems. And until we get there, where we can not only know amongst ourselves, but convince our neighbors through doing it. We've got to stop talking about it.
Right.
I love radio interviews, and I love Cato think pieces and all these studies and all this happy nonsense. I love all that stuff. It's great, but it don't mean piss. It really doesn't. It really, honest to God, it doesn't mean a bucket of piss until we're out there like we're not talking about these solutions. We're trying to implement them, even if it could get us arrested. Because that in itself is the message. Like if libertarians go out there and give free medical care and get thrown in jail for it, come on, man. People don't like us very much right now. Go get thrown in jail for giving free medical care to somebody. People will like you then.
I'm sure they would. Absolutely.
Go sew up some little boy's hand for free and get thrown in jail for it. We need to start. We need to start utilizing these other playbooks, but doing it in the right way. America loves a martyr, man. But you got to be a martyr for the right thing, and you got to do it in the right way. Like the pastor that got arrested like 3 times in a month for feeding the homeless. He was a martyr the right way. All right. Well, what the hell, man? We should have had libertarian candidates doing the research, and if they had a law in their city, we should have libertarian candidates for Congress and out there getting arrested all over the country.
Right.
We should that's the cross that you go die on, man. That's the hill that you sacrifice yourself on for the public.
Yeah, those are definitely the more important hills.
For real, man. Not this other nonsense that these idiots are going out there and dying on these hills for. I mean, it's just like, really, like you want to go? Oh yeah, go throw yourself on the cross for the fair tax, man. Please.
Right.
Tell me again. Come on. No, man. Go out there and get 15 of your libertarian buddies together, invest together, buy a house, and start providing a service that should be licensed without a license. Something your community needs. Doctor's office, a dentist's office. Hell, I don't know. It's your community, man. Be creative. And until we start doing that, man, you just enjoy your 3.5% every election. You can enjoy having great libertarian candidates lose and terrible libertarian candidates run right alongside them. You can continue watching Republicans and softcore Democrats take our party nomination for major offices. Just sit back and get used to that, man, because that's all that we're ever going to have. As long as all we're doing is running our weeding washers instead of getting out there and getting our hands dirty.
Right.
I go out and set up think tanks in foreign countries. I get my hands dirty. I empower other people to get their hands dirty. I'm not a Facebook boy. I don't live in my air-conditioned status and just talk trash to people online. I go out there and do stuff. I'm raising money. We're about to drive 1,100 miles. I'm going to literally every morning, sometime between 3 and 5 a.m., I'm going to be up opening this building and running this center all day, every day. Why? Because somebody needs to. Your lazy ass ain't going to do it. You're going to sit on Facebook and talk mess to some idiot. Paint your face green in your photo and try to act like you're all edgy.
Right.
Piss and moan about how the black people and the Mexicans and the Muslims and everybody else but you and your lazy ass is the reason why liberty's not winning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people out there that definitely agree with you.
I'm sorry, man. I don't pull any punches.
Don't pull punches, man. You should never pull punches when it comes to your ideologies and your philosophies. So the more important question is, can we look forward to another Will Coley candidacy in the near future?
Hell, man. I'm so busy right now. For candidacies, the main thing you can look for is I've got candidates that are going to be running in multiple states. We did a national recruitment effort to recruit Muslim libertarians. The idea is, it's quite a few different things. One, the left and the right silence Muslim candidates for the most part. And I mean, unless you're in a city where there's so many Muslims that they have no choice, and they know there's a district that is 90% Muslim, so they're gonna win no matter what. And even then, they prefer Anglo names. They don't. They'd rather let a Keith Ellison run than a Fahad Ahmed.
Right.
And we wanted to set the Libertarian Party apart from that, because none of the other parties are willing to run candidates that aren't ashamed. You had Harry Reid tell a guy last year that because he had a beard and his wife wore a headscarf, that he couldn't run for a seat in Virginia or in Nevada. In Nevada. You had another brother, same thing. His name is Atif. And because his name was Atif, they didn't want him to run in Virginia. The whole party, the National Party, worked against him to upset him and make sure he didn't win the primary. His own party, man. He's like, I've been volunteering for the Democrats in Virginia for 11 years of my life. And when I tried to run for a primary, they all literally ganged up on me and started saying the same things about me the Republicans would say. Jeez. So we want to kind of extol that. Look, man, if you have principles, the Libertarian Party don't give a damn what color you are, how funny your name sounds, what direction you face when you pray. It's, are you a principled libertarian? Do you have the values? Do you practice and encourage those values in others? That's what we care about. We don't give a damn about any of the rest of that stuff. It doesn't matter. The fact that I was Muslim wasn't a hindrance to me in any way, shape, or form while I was running for office. As a matter of fact, most people were just like, who cares? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Who cares?
Right.
It was, and we want to set that out there. I also want to give my community the opportunity to have liberty-minded members of our community go out and tell our own story, rather than the media talking for us, rather than the candidates from the duopoly in those races, many times talking about my community like we're not in the room.
Right.
And I want to give my community the opportunity to be at that table and be like, well, actually, no, asshole, I don't believe that. Neither does anybody that I know. Neither does my imam. Neither does my mother. Neither does anybody in my home country. I don't know what spooky freedom conservative net daily you found that on, but it's nonsense. You know, I want to give the platform. And while we're smashing these stereotypes, while we're killing these what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, yeah, these stereotypes again, because my brain's not working.
That's all right.
While we're killing all these different misconceptions. There we go.
There it is.
While we're killing all these different misconceptions, we're also, because now when you have a Muslim in the race, there's always a lot of attention.
Right.
Okay. Well, if there's a lot of attention, and now that attention is on the libertarian candidate, so and that the whole purple cow of like, oh, it's a libertarian and a Muslim gets extra media coverage for the party in that area. You know, like there's like a million things going on with this strategy of trying to run multiple Muslim libertarian candidates all over the country at the same time in the same year. To, you know, like from generating that extra free media to helping my community in their ability to tell their own story, to helping the Libertarian Party shed that like rich, white supremacist, you know, stereotype that's laid on our community, on us.
Right.
I mean, we're trying to do a whole lot of different things at the same time with this effort. I just don't have time to worry about running my own damn campaign right now. It's just too much work, man.
Well, look, Will, that's all the questions I really have for you today. Are there any websites or events you'd like to send people who might see this to?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're right now. If you go to launchgood.com, just go to the little search bar and put in New Hampshire. We are raising money. The Shire Free Church donated a building space for us, and we will be going out there and opening the first libertarian-run mosque in the United States. We'll be bringing in some of the biggest named scholars from across the world, and again, it's going to be a mosque with a liberty message. We're going to be talking about these kinds of issues in the sermons there. We're going to have big name speakers coming and talking about like income taxes and freedom of expression. You know, like this is going to be a Muslim community that's devoted to discussing these issues in a very open and very frank, and even if it's uncomfortable manner. And we're trying to raise $11,000 to remodel that building, give it kind of a facelift so that when we move in, we're ready to rock and roll. We're also, I heard that there were other minority religions in the area that don't have the good fortune of having the space donated for them, that are in need of permanent places to go. So we plan to offer the local Quaker community our prayer space on their worship days, free of charge, as well as the local, there are two Jewish communities, but only one of them has a temple. So we're going to open our doors to the other Jewish community in the area and allow them on Friday evenings, because we're not using it. You know, we're only there for the 5 prayers and on Friday afternoon. So if we're not using it, we're going to allow other members of the faith community in Keene to use that free of charge. So it's going to not only be a mosque, it's also going to be an interfaith center.
Well, hey, look, man, I think that's great what you guys are doing out there, you know, especially just for people to see that the Muslims and the Jews could share a building. You know, I think that's huge for anybody who's looking, you know.
Pork Fest, we do this thing all the time. The guy from Jewish Libertarians comes to Pork Fest a lot. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll set us up across from each other. There'll be like a road between us. We call that the DMZ. That's the line of demarcation. And then this last year, they didn't rent their own vending space, and they came last minute. And he comes to me and he was like, "Can I use some of your space?" And we joked all week about how I left to go to the bathroom, and I came back, and I had a Jew that had taken over a corner of my property at opposite ends, because he had a tent at one end and he had a vending table at the other. And that if I wasn't careful when we came back next year, he'd own half. And my phone doesn't work out there at all, and his does. Right. So when people wanted to do cryptocurrency transactions, I wasn't able to. So he was my Jewish banker.
Nice.
People would be like, "Do you take cryptocurrency?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." "Hey, Hook knows." He'd turn around and I'd be like, "Get over here." And he'd walk up and be like, "What do you want, you towelhead?"
Oh, jeez.
I'd be like, "I need my Jewish banker. What do you think that I need? These people want cryptocurrency. I want cash. Yalla, yalla." And that was our whole bit, like the whole week was to just, jab at each other, because the whole idea is like kind of mocking that whole conflict, mocking the whole racial stereotype, the whole idea that because I'm Muslim, because he's Jewish, we have to not like each other. We have to have these conflicts with each other, kind of mocking that whole idea, because the whole idea is preposterous, and I find so much of that in the liberty community of like the ability to mock the very idea of these prejudices, not only not engage in them, but to be able to make fun of them in a way where, a curly-haired Jewish kid could call me Towelhead, and I could call him Hooknose, and he's my Jewish occupier who's trying to take over my campsite. And we can totally do this and like have this running joke all week long. And the SJW crowd would be just absolutely losing their mind.
Yeah, their heads would explode.
And for me and him, it's a fun thing that we're having a good time, and we're laughing at ourselves, and we're laughing at each other, and we're laughing at the people that expect us to act a certain way. Right. We're getting the opportunity to kind of poke fun at all of that. And I love that about the liberty community. And like our whole like family, like everybody's an everybody's an uncle, everybody's the dirty cousin. Like we're all those different, types of personalities, and we find a way to all come together. And the rest of the world just doesn't understand.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like you're doing some good stuff, though, Will, and we appreciate you coming on the show, definitely. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube at Think Liberty TV. Check us out on Facebook at the website at think-liberty.com. And a big shout out to our sponsor, anarchothreads.com, because if you love liberty so much, you should probably wear it. Thanks again, Will. We really appreciate you, sure, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
All right. Thanks for having me on. You guys have a great night.
Absolutely.